Hello, and thank you for your interest in the Housing Choice Grant Program Guidance webinar for the fiscal year 26 round of the Community One Stop for Growth. We'll dive in with a quick overview of the Housing Choice Grant Program. You'll find my contact information there. I'm Mackenzie Bell, Senior Community Grants Coordinator, as well as my colleague Victoria Healy. Our contact information is listed on the Housing Choice Grant Program webpage for any questions. This program is exclusively available for currently designated housing choice communities and funds a variety of activities related to planning and zoning, site preparation for development, housing development, and infrastructure. It is available to both currently designated housing choice communities as well as related municipal entities in a current housing choice community. This may also be available to regional planning agencies who are proposing projects within a current housing choice community. The Housing Choice Grant Program is administered through the Community One Stop for Growth, a single application portal. What's new this year? Many of this is similar to last year, but we want to call out a few specific points, all listed with more detail in our published guidelines. So note that non-compliant MBTA communities are ineligible for this program except for efforts to become compliant with 3A. And any applications related to 3A compliance will be evaluated during an early action round. Applicants with any adopted housing moratoria or other restrictive bylaws that do not allow for at least 5% growth in housing production over a single year are ineligible. Please contact us individually with any questions about these eligibility parameters. As part of our commitment to regional and geographic diversity with our wards, note that we'll be using or setting aside up to 10% of funds each for rural and small towns, gateway cities, and seasonal communities. And similar to past years, as part of the Housing Choice Grant Program application evaluation, that will include an evaluation of implemented best practices. You can see our guidelines for a scoring rubric, including those updated best practices. So where does Housing Choice Grant Program fit within the One Stop? There are eligible project types under almost all of the categories: planning and zoning, site preparation, building, and infrastructure. When you're completing a full application, if you are an eligible applicant in or if you are an currently designated housing choice community or serving a housing choice community and an eligible applicant, and you are proposing an eligible project type, select yes to question 2.4.b to be considered by the Housing Choice Grant Program. If and when you prepare a full application, I want to draw your attention to a few important guideline, really project parameters, but these are all highlighted in our guidelines. So note that awards to single applicants are limited to $150,000 for planning and zoning projects and $500,000 for all other projects. We will consider awarding over this maximum only for joint or regional applicants. And while local match is not required, applications that include a 10% match will get bonus points during application review. The Housing Choice Grant Program is a 2 fiscal year grant, meaning that with awards made in fall of 2025, those projects must be completed by June 30th, 2027. There are a whole range of eligible use of funds given the many categories that projects may fall under. So again, read our guidelines for more details on the eligible use of funds. But note that funds cannot be used to reimburse staff time or training or any activities related to the assertion of GLAM. So what makes a competitive application for the Housing Choice Grant Program? Again, I point you to our guidelines that include the scoring rubric so that you can get a sense of how applications will be evaluated. Really think about how can you maximize all possible points with that scoring rubric. And while scoring is incredibly important, award recommendations also take into consideration regional diversity, environmental resiliency, previous support for a project from EOHLC, whether an applicant would be a first-time recipient of one of our grant programs, and general alignment with EOHLC priorities. Competitive applications do an excellent job of explaining how the project really addresses a need specific to the community, not just a need that we know communities are facing across the Commonwealth, but what is specific? Um, what what is really specific to your community in particular, and how is this project going to address that? Competitive applications also outline a really detailed scope of work, tell us exactly what the grant funds are going to be used for, and convince us that that can be achieved within that 2 fiscal year grant timeline. They include documented evidence of progress to date, what has happened so far, or other efforts or activities that have informed this project, and show us that leadership is experienced and will be able to successfully execute the project. They also have a feasible and defensible cost. What they're requesting makes sense. They have cost estimates. They can really show us that these are real costs, and that they're justifiable. All right, so looking ahead to the timeline, right now we are in that guidance phase. The full application is open to view, and expression of interest can be submitted. If you haven't done so already, I encourage you to submit an expression of interest form um, or submission to get general feedback on which program or programs would consider a proposed project. There are also plenty of program-specific and community One Stop for Growth webinars to get further guidance, and look out for office hours to get real face time with program staff and answer questions. Beginning in May, you're able to start submitting full applications, and note that final submission deadline of 11:59 p.m. on June 4th, 2025. Programs will be evaluating applications between July and September, and we anticipate making awards and notification of grant decisions around October. Again, thank you for your interest in the Housing Choice Grant Program and the fiscal year 26 round of the Community One Stop for Growth. Visit One Stop's page and Housing Choice Grant Program's webpage for more details.